Hey, good morning and welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And today we have a special guest.
Very good. Rob Poitras. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for inviting me.
Well, it's nice to see you again. Today we have a special show, and we wanted to bring in Rob because we have some news circulating around social media and all media outlets regarding California's gas tax. And who better to provide us some information than someone that has been part of an advisory for the road user charge, and that would be Robert. Robert, we'll go ahead and hand it to you here. Just kind of introduce yourself, and at the same time, give us some context of the history of what you've been participating in over the last couple of years.
All right, very good. Yes, Rob Poitras, and I serve on the Madera County Board of Supervisors, and professionally, I spent 39 years in the banking industry, and our family farms almonds, and our family was raised here in Madera, so I'm a true blue Maderan and even bleed Madera blue. But I have served on the Board of Supervisors for the last 9 years, actually 10 years, but I've been on what's known as a road user charge since 2014 when I was still on the Madera City Council. And let me back up just to give this conversation some context as far as what we're talking about. We have our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, our freeways, and so forth, and they just don't get built automatically. We blink and they get built. It takes money, time, and effort. And again, the first thing I mentioned was money. Back in 1923 was the first time that gas was taxed at the pump or whatever a pump was at that time, to be utilized for roads. And at that time, cars were just coming out, and we saw a great future for our state and across the nation for what roads could do. And so I believe the fee or the tax was 2 cents a gallon. And so over time, that fund built up. That fund was used for the building of highways. Our U.S. highways at the time was 99 was U.S. 99, as well as 101 and several others before we went to the interstate system. And those were funded through a similar system with federal taxes that were charged to the pump, but the state highways and the local roads were from the gas tax at the pump. So, and I think that's one thing that we need to point out is that that's how roads have always been funded. They haven't been funded by the general fund. I know many people, and it is a confusing thing. I'm not going to make people sound like they're ignorant or something because they don't know that, because I had no idea until I got into local government and really started studying it. It's just something you don't think about. And so government, whatever level it is, whether it's local government or state government or federal government, there's a lot of pots of money, and that money cannot be taken from that certain pot. There's just not one big bowl. And so for the road, for road maintenance and building freeways and so forth, that's where the gas tax goes, and it's from there where roads are funded. So as far as I know, general fund dollars from the state of California or even locally have not been used for roads. So, and another thing I'd like to mention too is many people say, well, if we weren't putting all this money on high-speed rail, we could be using that money for roads. Well, probably, and it could happen, but that's a little bit complicated too, because it's cap and trade funds that go to the high-speed rail, because the idea is that the high-speed rail is going to lower emissions and lower greenhouse gases. And so there are no road funds that go to the high-speed rail. And because of the type of funding that's used for the high-speed rail, it would be difficult to get some of those dollars over to roads. So I just wanted to point that out also, because that seems to be in the discussion a lot. So Over time, we've been collecting, that's been our mechanism for funding for roads, is from the sales tax gathered at the pump. And in 1994, it was raised in the state to, I can't remember how many cents it was, maybe 16 or 18 cents a gallon. And it stayed there until 2017. There was no provision in there for any increases for inflation. So in 2017, there was something called SB1 that passed, and the sales tax was raised to more what it should have been if we would have had some inflation increases over time. And now those have been built in. So everybody's saying, okay, well, great. Okay, we understand now how roads are funded. So what's your problem? Well, the problem is it's one of these good news, bad news, is that our cars have become much more efficient. You know, back in the day, our cars were, I remember in high school, I think my car got like 14 or 15 miles per gallon, maybe. Maybe it was more like 12. And that's how most cars were. And then our friends from Japan started introducing cars that could get a lot better mileage, 20 miles per gallon, then 25, and then 30. And now we've got electric cars that aren't paying anything at the pump for the use of the road. And we have hybrid cars that are getting 40 to 50 miles per gallon that are paying very little for roads. So it's I guess you could say it's a good problem in that we're using less fuel, but that also means that we are also collecting less money for the maintenance of our roads. So what we're looking to do is to find a way to collect funds for road repairs, considering that there might be a time when we only have electric cars on the road and there's nobody at the pump pumping gas to generate revenues for the roads, a road tax or for roads. So the idea would be something that's been talked about for many, many years, but a technical advisory committee was put together in 2014, a study. It was a road user charge. And the idea was if you don't go to the pump and buy gas, perhaps we could take a look at charging you based on the number of miles you drive, a charge per mile. And the idea would not to be to punish people who are driving many miles, because theoretically you're already paying more than a lot of people if you drive a lot of miles, because you buy more gas, you pay more tax, so you're already paying more. The idea was to make it revenue neutral. And so in 2014, we started our committee and started looking at it, and had a pilot program that was put together in 2017, and we had the results. And backing up a little bit, the committee members, there were about a dozen of us. There were members, there's myself, maybe somebody else representing rural California. There was somebody from the California trucking industry, or California Trucking Association. We had an equity representative. We had security representative in terms of identity and that sort of thing, you know, having your personal information released out there. So we had a very wide range of viewpoints, and we even had a professor from UCLA that was really involved, and he's passed away since then. But so anyway, it was a really good group, and we made a lot of progress. And then it seemed like the new administration came, and that was during the Brown administration we started, and during the Newsom administration, things kind of slowed down. And we had another pilot in 2024, and we've had the results. I participated. It really worked out well, I thought, as far as a user. But there just doesn't seem to be much in the way of political will in Sacramento to move forward with this. So the majority party doesn't seem to be very interested, and then the minority party is attacking the idea. And so it's really become a political hot potato. And so that's where we are today.
Thank you for sharing that context. I know that a lot of folks probably don't know the history of how long this gas tax has been going on, but more importantly, how it funds a lot of the highway projects. Now, as of recent, I know that the SB 1421, and this was something that was geared by, I believe, State Senator Lori Wilson, right?
Yes.
Had considered bringing in SB 1421, and I think we at the council received some comments in regards to supporting Stop the VMT tax. And,
Yeah.
and I was kind of thrown off because I go, I didn't know that there was such a VMT tax out there. But anyway, the proposals of maybe an alternate way of having a gas tax is what this study has done. I think your advisory has tried to put in place some type of alternative, because as we see, like you said, more and more electric vehicles and more fuel efficient vehicles, then that means you pump less at the pump. And right now, I think we're at what, 61 point some cents a gallon?
Correct, yes.
And Rob, if you don't mind, tell me how that expands to us here. What kind of projects have we unveiled with the gas tax, and how do we get those funds to be utilized within our counties, right? And we can talk about some of the projects here locally.
Right. Well, it's in regards to funding that comes to Madera County. So we have 3 jurisdictions. So City of Chowchilla, City of Madera, and County of Madera. And each jurisdiction gets a certain amount of funds based on population, and there's a certain formula. And I know in the county, talking to our public works director, the funding that we get, 100% of it goes to fixing our roads. You know, so it's a so that's a lot. So it's not even talking about new roads; it's just talking about fixing the roads we have. And so, some of the newer roads, for instance, out in Riverstone and Tesoro Viejo, those are paid for by the developer and the people who buy the home. So that's kind of in a different category. But and then we have, of course, our half-cent sales tax measure, but I won't confuse the issue by bringing that in. But yeah, so 100% goes to it there. So but then some of the other projects we have going on would be special grants that we would get. For instance, Road 26 going from Chowchilla out to Eastman Lake. Those are special funding. There was a Midtown connector up in Oakhurst. That was special funding, a grant from Oakhurst. But for the most part, at least in the county, those funds really are not going to new projects. They're just going to fix the roads that we have. Our major routes to market, for instance, Avenue 7, that's a big corridor for traffic from Fresno to the west side. Avenue 9, which is very heavily traveled. Avenue 12. Howard Road, Avenue 14, Avenue 18 and a half. So after spending the money on those major routes, there's very little money left over for other things. But through some of our gas tax and special projects collected by the state in certain categories, the major projects that we'll be seeing are the widening of some of our state highways in Madera County. For instance, Highway 41 from Avenue 12 to just past Tesoro, we're going to start seeing construction there to widen it from 2 to 4 lanes starting this summer, probably late spring, early summer. And then Highway 99 south from Avenue 12 to Avenue 7, we're going to start seeing that start construction. I've been told, and you've heard me, I've been riding herd on these guys a year from now. So we're supposed to break ground. And then we've got projects north of Madera on Highway 99. But those are what we're looking at. We're looking at maintenance and some of these major projects.
So one can say that certainly stopping this gas tax or suspending it would certainly hurt not only California, but more importantly, us here locally, regionally, when we talk about, how that gas tax extends to our communities. Now, the word tax, and I can tell you that between Rohi and I, we talk about this quite often. So I'm going to let Rohi go.
So, I mean, and just to get, while you're talking, I was trying to get some numbers for context. For just like my car's, the Jeep there's not a great, it's a gas guzzler. It's getting about 13, 14 miles a gallon. So I'm contributing, I think, heavy to the gas tax.
We need to give you a medal.
Yeah. So, but based on that, I mean, looking at the math, it's saying for an average driver, 10,000 miles a year, I'm paying $961 just at the pump in that tax. It's not a huge number. I think people maybe are thinking it's this gigantic number they're paying at the end of the day, but I'm paying 961. But I think the only thing I would have an argument to that is that's not the only tax. DMV also collects a tax that goes to roads, and then obviously we got the Measure T, and I think to be the person standing on the other side of the aisle where, you know, like Jose's saying, when we talk about taxes all the time, it's always when we say, well, you know, I have potholes in the road here and they're not getting fixed. And, you know, Jose's answer always to me is there's just not enough money, but seems like we have all these avenues collecting some kind of tax that's supposed to go to roads. And that's where I feel like, you know, is it Madera's just not getting their fair piece and that's why there's not enough money, or is it a state issue? I mean, and the other side of it is showing, you know, with the electric cars, they're not paying a lot of those. Obviously, they're not paying the 961. I would be paying for those 10,000 miles.
Right. They're paying like $120.
They're paying up, yeah. So you know, but California did that themselves. California wants us to drive electric vehicles. So I know you said it's not a penalty, but it is a penalty. They did the same thing with water, right? I mean, it wasn't too long ago we said we're not collecting enough for water and our water maintenance. And I think it was Clovis decided to raise their rates dramatically, and they actually got sued because they said you can't use it as a penalty to make people use less water. But California has done that with our cars. They've mandated cars get more efficient, which means they're going to collect less tax, and then they come screaming when they say, "Wait a minute, we don't have enough money." So I feel like it is their fault. They wanted this clean America, you know, electric cars everywhere, but they weren't really future thinking of where's the money going to come from. But it can come from DMV. I mean, they could. One method could potentially just be, instead of collecting $100 from an EV, make it comparable to what a gas car would collect. But I'm sure that's not going to make people happy either. So.
Right. That's a really good point. It's very difficult. You know, there's number one, there's a tremendous loss of faith in government, you know, not only in our state, but across the nation. So you've got people, and especially here with what's happened with high-speed rail. I mean, Jose and I met with the Secretary of Transportation, and he admits it. I mean, he's not trying to hide anything, like saying, "Oh, what are you talking about? It's great." I mean, he says, "You know what? It's awful. It's cost overruns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to move forward. We've got to do it." But he's the first to admit it's been a disaster, you know, as far as the use of money and how it's been rolled out, and it continues to be an issue. That kind of mistrust too. And you're right, the state, with some of their mandates and pushing towards all electric car sales by 2035. That's doing it as well. So and it seems to be kind of a majority party that's kind of pushing this thing. And so I say, okay, if you're pushing this, then let's see the majority party come up with a solution, you know. And I do have to give credit. Jose was mentioning Lori Wilson earlier, the chairman of the the Assembly Transportation Committee, who has actually been pushing the envelope, but she's about the only one out of 120 legislators in Sacramento, and she's just, you know, really been shut down on this whole thing. But it's a mess. There's a combination of things, loss of trust and so forth, and then the last thing you mentioned was the registration. And we have looked at a registration model. Our friend of ours, Gus Corey, has a program that he would like to roll out too, that it's based solely on registration. And the only problem with that is that it's not user-based. So for instance, let's say under this new system, you paid a flat fee of $400 a year through your registration for roads. Okay, well, if you only drive 5,000 miles, you know, you're underpaying or you're overpaying. And if you go 30,000 miles, you're underpaying. So that's where it's really not a user charge. It's more of a road maintenance charge more than anything. But so is there a perfect solution? Not at all. Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, the road user charge to me makes a lot of sense, but it's, you know, I'll talk to somebody and they'll point something out and I go, well, you know, that's true. You're right. You know.
Well, and I think if you look at the argument, you know, I mean, now the Teslas and stuff are a heavy vehicle. So when you actually look at usage or wear on the roads, you can't. That's not also fair either. If I have a 3-ton truck running down the road versus maybe my motorcycle or something. Yeah, we traveled the same 10,000 miles in a year, but who actually damaged the roads more? And
Yep.
who was doing more that caused the need for those repairs? So
Right.
you almost feel like there's got to be something in that model that says, well, it's not just how many miles, but also the weight, and somehow maybe using that in a formula that says that's now the amount because you have a heavier vehicle versus somebody with a lighter vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think to Rob's point, or Supervisor Poitras, he had mentioned that there are some other alternatives that have been brought forth, but certainly not a double taxation,
Yeah.
as we've heard over the last couple of weeks, maybe last month, since that SB 1421 was introduced. Now, we don't know where that's going, but I think one thing to highlight is that this advisory that our supervisors in may come to its end come June, and you won't have this group of people. And I think I want you to touch on that because the group of people that are there really serve not only one specific party, but serve a multitude of people, stakeholders, whether Democrat, Republican. But because we're in a rural community, you want to have someone there that voices out the concerns of our rural areas, because like we always hear, not one size fits all. And when it comes to projects and certain conformity concerns when it comes to air quality, certainly they want our valley here, rural area, to conform to areas such as San Francisco, LA. So it's important to have someone within our rural community to advocate for us. And I think in this advisory role that he plays, that is one. I think that's a big win for us. But not having that, where does that put us there, Supervisor?
Right. That's a really good point. The initial Technical Advisory Committee study group was organized back in 2014, as I mentioned, and it was under legislation called SB 1077, and it was strictly an advisory committee to conduct a pilot program and to study it, and then to present the findings to the legislature so the legislature can make a decision. Well, I guess for us on the committee level, the frustrating part was now we're coming to an end and we're simply looking, and we haven't really, what I would say, nothing's been implemented. I think we've accomplished a lot, but not much has been implemented. And SB 1421 is simply a renewal of that committee. It's not it's not something where it's, we're going to take this and we're going to double tax and we're going to do this and this. And unfortunately, the minority party has weaponized this legislation and said some things that were not true about what 1421 is. And so, anyway, to answer the question about the composition of the committee, yes, it is really a great group of people that have been very committed. You've got an individual from the California Chamber of Commerce who is looking at business in general. How is this going to affect business in general? You've got an individual from AAA. You've got an individual who is a consultant in Southern California, has done a lot of work for transportation. You've got a woman who was the former mayor of Santa Monica, who serves in the greater LA area on a number of boards. You've got myself, you've got somebody from the Northern Coast, you've got again, kind of an equity group kind of person, and then somebody from a university. Anyway, so you've got people from all walks of life, from academia to on-the-ground business people. And California Truckers Association, I forget about them. So they're a big voice. So it's and we have been, marching down this road, and it's, again, making progress. And we've had our second pilot program, but but the shame is, and I discussed this with a couple of minority party legislators in Sacramento, is that if you eliminate this committee, then you eliminate the rural voice. The rural voices, actually. And then you have basically one party, the majority party, who is going to be driving this thing, and any kind of other voices that might be a conservative voice or whatever, they're gone. They're not in the equation. And I will give Governor Brown credit for that in the legislature back in 2014 for devising this group and making it bipartisan, you know, and very diverse from all walks of life.
So, and you know, I'm glad you said that because in too many cases we see that these issues can get so polarized that sometimes we forget about the people in the middle. You know, it's almost like the parents that are going through a divorce and the child, or in this case, like the constituency, is what's left because there's just so much infighting that you really don't see how it devastates communities, right? Especially communities like ours, where we have projects down our corridor 99. We're ready to complete the extension here from 12th to Avenue 7, and then we have a environmental study for the other side of the additional lane here on 17 to 21 going north. And not only those projects, but projects out in 41. Again, these are people that live out in the rural communities out in the mountain areas that also have to use these corridors to come down to town, escape routes, fire routes, what have you. And I think those are very important. People don't highlight on that, but not having some continuous stream of revenue to be able to generate these funds for these projects, then, I mean, unless there's a solution, and I don't think there is a solution on the other side. Right now, I think what's happening is just that, you know, revenues are declining, and we know this. And politically, I think even our current governor may not want to really say, well, let's take on this alternative, because again, it would draw attention on, well, here we are trying to get an alternative tax to what we already currently have. And I think it's just how social media and media would portray this and possibly, I mean, again, for the better good, I think it's good to try to start thinking of an alternative route, alternative way, but is it the right time? And Rohi, I'm not sure your thoughts. I mean,
Well, I'm just looking at a lot of the numbers and how big the shortfall is. I don't think there's a number that's going to be digestible by anybody to actually come up to a full funding. So it's either a continual reduction of roads, which again is going to lead to the poor quality of the roads, which nobody wants, or the funding's got to come somewhere else, you know, and that usually means, like you always tell me, that means cutting some other social program or something where funding's going. But I mean, you're talking about, you know, we're only collecting 25% of the funds needed right now for the current budget. So it's not anywhere close to something that's even, you know, manageable.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate because I feel like it's important that I also speak for those people that are always concerned about taxes. And Supervisor Poitras, I look at
About the rich, because that's usually
well, I mean, yeah, but
They still don't pay their fair share.
because I know the poor people, they don't pay taxes. So that's what the rich are talking about.
yeah,
Okay.
but you know, again, you know, I'm talking for the people that think, you know, well, that look at the fuel, at the pump, and they say, man, 61 cents for every gallon.
Yeah.
What makes you think that by going to an alternative route and not paying at the pump, that the gas prices are going to go down? And I think this is how it kind of, I think people may think that government is in it, in that, well, if I go through an alternative route, let's just say through DMV registrations, VMT, what have you, whatever the state decides to do later or the people decide to do, what's to say that gas prices don't go up? And we've seen them go up. It's volatile sometimes. But pin that back on government.
I'll argue one point. Looking at the numbers, national gas average. So the lowest is $2.60 right now today. We're paying about $5. So you got a $2 gap, but we're only paying 61 cents extra on that tax. So if you could show me that our gas was the same nationally, 2.6, and the $2 went to the gas tax, I think that would be more digestible. Again, knowing that that's where you were going to collect it, but it's going to go up, and people don't want things to go up. And it's the argument we've always had with solar. You know, I've told you that we have solar energy should be cheaper to produce, but my bill isn't dramatically reducing every year that we're getting all this free energy from the sun. It's continually going up every year, and I'm not really getting more for it. And actually now, because there's too much solar, you're actually incentivizing me less. So we have too much energy price should be almost zero right now. As the sun is up and you've turned on the light, they should be telling you to turn on every piece of equipment because it's free, but it's not happening that way. And I think that's kind of the problem with gas is we're paying almost literally $5 a gallon right now, but we're not getting anything in return that says, why does that warrant the $5? It's not any more cleaner. Shouldn't really cost much because, I mean, we're talking about 1 or 2 states over, it's literally $2 cheaper. You can't tell me it costs that much more for that truck to come in and fill up the tank where I'm filling my gas up. But that's the part where I think there's the disconnect is it's not just the tax, not just the taxes going up. It's we're already paying more and we're getting a whole lot less than everybody else. So that's the part I think where people get frustrated when you say taxes and there's not enough. Why? I'm paying so much more.
Yeah, and again, in all fairness, I do want to just add that, when it comes to these taxes, of course, I mean, we're going to find all these other avenues, whether it's solar, you name it,
Yeah.
all these taxes. But I think more importantly, when we bring it back here to the gas tax, I think that's the frustration. That's why people can easily fall to that hook that, hey, no more gas tax. Let's suspend the gas tax. But not realizing that by catching on to that hook and following, you may also be hurting yourself or shooting yourself in the foot. And that again is just a stop of revenue. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you could imagine.
It's $7 billion is what it was last year. That's
Caltrans, Caltrans. I mean, you're looking at them. So if our highways are not being maintained, potholes are all over the place. Then this is where I think maybe county roads or city roads would get calls on. But your thoughts on that there?
Yeah, here in California, we're so unique, and in some good ways and some bad ways. It seems like the regulatory world has just taken us over. It's the green crowd, environmentalists, you name it, and then on top of that, the public labor unions are very, very powerful. And so we've got increased costs with everything. And then with government work, it's increasing because of those factors. And you've got, and then some of the regulations we put on businesses that provide funding for roads or for anything, their costs are higher than would be normal in other states. And so it's this, just this domino effect that is just crept into every single part of our economy, and that just makes our cost of living higher and higher and higher. I mean, the world of transportation here in the state of California, it's mind-boggling. I mean, it's you'd have a headache trying to figure out all these different sources of funding and how it works, and this cycle and that cycle, and having to have this report and RTP and the SCS. I mean, it's just, and it's all, I think that we could cut back on a lot of those things and really, save money and become more efficient. But anyway, it's like marbling in a steak. It's fat that's grown into a steak that's become part of the meat, and that's exactly what's happened. It's become part of our fabric that just is making everything increasingly unaffordable.
So I look at California's climate policies, and regardless of whether or not you have continued gas and fuel, fossil fuel vehicles out there, you're still going to see a decline. Let's just say that California decided, okay, we're going to revert back, and from now on, EVs are optional, right? I mean, because the aggressive climate policy is that by 2035, this is where it's at zero emission vehicles, right? What we call ZEVs. But even if we said and we reverted back and said, I mean, the technology and the aggressive climate policies would still lead us into that declining stage, because more vehicles nowadays are going for longer distances, and that means less gas at the pump, right? So you would collect less. So
Right.
We've already started this decline some years back, and I think this is kind of why you have been on this here for 12 years, because I think California back then saw this coming.
Yep.
And here we are 12 years later, and yet what does it take? I think I've heard you say this before. What does it take for our legislators to say, hey, we've been doing this for 12 years. At some point or another, we need to make this transition, or not, we can kiss our highway funds goodbye.
Right. It's, we had a meeting, with Tanisha Taylor, the head of the California Transportation Commission on Tuesday as well. Met some really good people, and she said it's going to happen, but I think what she was trying to say is it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it's going to have to be one of these situations where projects continually get pushed back, and then the legislature gets more pushback, and to the point where they fear for their political lives and they realize they have to do something. Because right now, the reason they haven't done anything is because they fear for their political lives, because, people don't understand it. What are we going to do? We're going to get recall. We're going to, whatever. But they're going to get to the point where the tipping point where it starts going down the other side where they have to do something. So, who knows how many years out that is? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it, whatever? But they're going to have to develop the courage somewhere. And again, the unfortunate thing is the minority party is weaponizing this whole thing, and they're saying things that are just totally not true. Like, well, our solution is to have more reform and save money here in the general fund and put it into transportation. It's just like, that's never happened in our state. In 103 years, that has never happened. We've had Republican administrations. We've had Reagan. We've had Deukmejian. We've had Wilson. We've had Schwarzenegger. We've had Republicans before then. So they can talk about the liberals doing this, but but it's been right and left. It's just the way we fund roads. It's never been from the general fund. So that's a false narrative that they're putting out there. It's to confuse this political theater. It's very unfortunate. And I pointed it out again to, my guys on my side of the aisle, because I really want them to tell the truth. Just face the truth. You can say things like, we're so inefficient here. I don't like the way the money's being spent. Okay, fine. That's a legitimate argument. But it's not a legitimate argument to say, they're going to double tax you. It's going to be $4,200 a car. It's just like, no, you guys are dreaming that up for your own political gain. So, so I think it's going to have to get better before get worse before it gets better.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there are other states that already have and implemented it. And I'm just going to have you chime on who was looking at California and actually put it to use, right? And I think you had mentioned there's another state. I know that Utah and Oregon have a hybrid type of deal where you have some type of DMV registration and/or some mile tax there as well. And again, don't quote me on that. But through your technical advisory committee, somebody was looking at your model and has implemented it. What state was that?
Right, and that was state of Hawaii. And what they did was, we were into our study, who knows how many years, 3-4 years or something, and then they brought a group over to observe what the program was and the pilot program, this and that. They went back to the islands, and now they have implemented their own program. It's not fully implemented, but they have pulled the trigger on something, and it's about a registration fee on ZEBs, and then they're going to phase in internal combustion engine cars, I believe by the year 2033. So they, to me, it's a great approach, because what you do is you lay out the program, you give people options up front, and you say this is the way it's going to be, and then they don't quite have all the details by 2033, but they're getting people used to the idea and so forth. Now, Hawaii and California. Okay, Hawaii, you have very few miles you're going to drive, and I think they showed, they've got a very small fee because there's just not that many road miles people in Hawaii are going to drive. But it's proportional, and it's it's more about the principles of the program, right? So I think it's great. I mean, to me, again, it's nothing's going to be perfect, but it's a partial solution.
Yes, thank you. And Rohi, anything you want to add or questions?
I mean, to answer your question, there's 4 states that are currently using mileage tax.
Okay.
But it's not mandatory yet. So
Yes.
That's just the answer. I'm doing as you guys are doing your talking, but I mean, I think looking at, again, more of the numbers as it goes, it keeps coming back to the same thing. There's never going to be enough money So it's either you have to reduce cost, which never happens in California, you know, or the picture's there. There's just never going to be enough money. So, I mean, he was even saving like Measure T and stuff to get enough money to cover for Measure T. We'd have to go to a 2% tax instead of a 0.5 cent tax, which there's no way it's even gonna.
Yeah, and to impose that on your especially your constituency here, I mean, it was hard enough to pass this last one, right? And that was through a citizens initiative. Imagine trying to get a 2%. I mean, nowadays, I think you're having a harder time for more people to want to pass a measure of that sort. Luckily for Madera County, we were able to get that, citizens initiative was able to get that through. We hope to have some funding. Again, this is such a small amount of money that we need to, almost like it's to pay to play. You have to put some skin in the game to try to get this bigger pot of funding. So when you leverage your initial down payment, so to speak, here's the other funding that would come along. But it's getting harder, I think, for regions that don't have a self-imposed tax. And when we travel and we go through these self-help counties, it's because we are the counties that have said, you know what, we're going to impose a tax of 0.5 cents to try to get our projects underway, whether they're highway, major corridor, street, local, whatever. We utilize them here at the city to a very large extent, especially when it comes to maintenance. We are coming into 41 minutes in this here, and I will say that the first 5 minutes, if you're tuning in, were without the video, but we had good audio, and then we did get that. I was able to get that back in there. So the rest of the show is great. We want to thank our supervisor, Poitras, for coming and giving us his updated information on what his role has been with this technical advisory committee, and also where he sees this gas tax. I think it's important for us here in our community to know so that we're not easily baited by what's out there in the media. So any last words you guys would like to comment before we say goodbye?
No, I'm just going to say, I mean, I think like you're saying, it's key for people to understand what you pay already in tax. And I mean, it's easy to find those numbers out about your gallons and miles and everything and realize that it's not going to double, you know, and maybe it needs to, but it's not going to. So.
Right. And what I'd just like to add is I always, I've learned to always read the bill. You know, if there's a bill in Sacramento, whether it's Assembly or Senate, I always Google it and pull it up on Legiscan or something and actually read it, because there's so much misinformation. And I'm not going to pick on, I'm going to say both parties do it. You know, it's for political theater. And so I've caught both parties in these things. So I would just encourage people to read the bill itself and understand it. And I think you'll see that, there might be a little hyperbole, a little exaggeration, whatever, once in a while when you hear somebody talk about something.
And I'll finish with this. With us in today's world, fast paced, and we live in a world of small bites. Sometimes it's easier to just take whatever someone said and run with it and make it seem like that is correct without, again, going deeper and doing the research. And we've kind of failed on that. So I think as residents, citizens of our state, I think it's good for us to go back and look at those bills and do some research, or call us here. You can always call Rob. We'll put his number down there, so you want to call him and let him know this is your supervisor.
Anytime, unless it's 2:00 in the morning. I like to sleep.
So with that, we want to thank you for watching. We hope to see you next week. Again, this is the Weekly Jargon. We'll come back and bring you